Onda Magazine presenta.
Hello everyone, this is Monica Cusa with Onda Magazine, and today we have a very exclusive interview with Houston Food Bank President Mr. Brian Greene. Hi Mr. Brian, how are you?
Monica, thank you very much for joining me here.
How are you today?
Well, I think it's a good day here. We're coming off of a lot of disaster work following Hurricane Beryl, and things are calming down, and so that's good.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
Calming down. So let's start with your journey in the food banking sector, and what led you to become the president and CEO of the Houston Food Bank?
Well, I was in graduate school in economics at the University of Tennessee. I was working on a PhD, which I did not finish. But anyway, I wanted to take a leave of absence and work for a charity doing hunger or homelessness. It was going to be my do-gooder stint.
Okay.
And I was also hoping to get ideas for a dissertation. And so I applied around, and the food bank there, which this was the early days of food banks, the board hired me to be the executive director for some crazy reason. There were only like 6 or 7 of us. The organization was pretty small, but it was still, I'd never run anything, so it was kind of weird. But anyway, I fell in love with the work, and I basically never stopped. And so I spent a few years there in Knoxville. And then I went to New Orleans, and I was the CEO there for 12 years.
Okay.
And then I wanted to take this on, and I've been here for 18 years now.
Wow, 18 years. So you've been here for a long time, and you feel like this is your passion, what you're doing.
Oh, I absolutely love this work. First off, anybody that if you go into the social services, you want to have impact,
right?
You want to make a difference, and the scale at which we're able to operate and the difference that we're able to make. I mean, it really is spectacular.
Right.
Just because the opportunities are there and the need is there. And then just because we're able to get the community support and there's so many different opportunities, it's really interesting as well. Right. So it's not, what I do now is dramatically different than what I was doing 5 years ago. And compared to what it was, over 30 years ago, it's nothing's the same. Okay.
So how has your leadership style evolved over all these years, especially given the different natural disasters that we've been having, especially hurricanes, recently, as you said, Hurricane Beryl, and COVID, etc.
Yeah. So when I first started, I was young. I was 25, and I didn't realize how little I knew, but I was confident, and I was a pretty smart guy. But the management style was I knew how to do everything, and so I was kind of involved in everything. And we was a small enough team. Everybody knew what everybody was doing. Everybody kind of knew how to help each other out. And so my style was very, very much in the weeds. Very much, we're just working on things, and it was like tackling problems.
Okay.
Right. And as the work changed, the size of the organizations changed over time. Whereas here we have over 400 staff members, over 90,000 volunteers. The budget is over $70 million in cash, plus the total distribution is like over $250,000. There's no way I would know everything.
Right.
I don't know how to do hardly anything here anymore.
Right.
And so it's much more about trying to set a culture, trying to set a vision, and then just trying to keep the communication going between people. And so it's just a dramatically different style of leadership is what it's called, given what we do. And I think, as you point out, Monica, disasters are a great example of that. Disasters are very, very chaotic. They're very difficult. And if I was trying to direct everything that happened, we would fail miserably. We would horribly underserve the community because there's too much that has to be done, too much that has to be figured out too quickly.
Right.
That if any one person sets themselves up as the bottleneck, everybody will fail.
That's true. So which of the horrible disaster that we have had recently has been like the most challenging one? Probably COVID, but I'm gonna let you answer that one.
Well, for me personally, no, because I was actually with the food bank in New Orleans when Katrina hit.
Okay.
And that was a truly awful experience. That was the worst, and there was a lot of lessons from that. Ironically, the general community, was very happy with what the food bank did. I was not. It was the first time that we'd ever let's wipe out a food bank. Every staff member for the food bank in New Orleans was homeless. Everybody was displaced. We had to basically scatter. We lost communications with everybody, almost everybody, because the cell phones were so unreliable, so difficult to get in touch with each other. We set up a new warehouse in an empty Walmart outside of Baton Rouge. That became the New Orleans Food Bank, Second Harvest Food Bank of Greater New Orleans and Acadiana is what it's called.
Okay.
But that became the food bank. But it was just so difficult to get anything done. I mean, we lost all of our partners in the immediate New Orleans area, right? Because they'd all been displaced too. Right. And the level of need was just crazy high, and the desperation was there. And it was so difficult. That was awful. But there were a lot of lessons learned about, how to get a team when everybody's been knocked on their butts, and how to get a team back together, and how to support them so that the caregivers can succeed in what they're doing under very difficult circumstances. And so, those lessons have been applied here, where we do a lot of pre-planning before there's even a storm, and then we have very detailed plans, and then the communication process to make adjustments as we go through, so that we can pre-supply a number of organizations, respond to the government requests that end up happening in the last minute as counties, cities set up shelters of last resort, et cetera.
Okay.
And then as soon as the storm clears, we get our team back here, and the different departments know what they're going to do. We have a group that does the communication so that we can dramatically ramp up the distribution. And the whole time we're staying in communication with the staff to understand what the needs, who's now had damage, who now needs some assistance, so that we're taking care of them, because we need them to be here taking care of the community. But that really, all of that thinking kind of flows from how bad it was after Katrina.
Wow, a lot of lessons learned probably from that experience and from all the other ones. From COVID, what was the most challenging?
Well, COVID was dramatically different, because there was an experience where, first off, in the planning for COVID, it was virtually impossible to do. My board chair, asked me, so, what's your plan? And we tried to come up with a plan. It's like, okay, how do we do this? Well, what's that like? I mean, okay, wait a minute. If everybody's sick, how are we supposed to work? So, because we didn't know what it was going to be like, right?
Exactly.
And so, all we knew was, okay, we're gonna communicate. We know we're gonna have to do some sort of safety protocols, but we didn't, of course, in the early days know what those were. But how do we deal with it when we have no volunteers? Because the community expects us to ramp up, and we should. But we work because we have such a massive number of volunteers. That's what makes it work.
Okay.
So when the shutdowns were declared, and of course we were exempt from the shutdowns, but we still needed to have safety protocols. So we could not have dense population like we normally do. Right. So everybody who didn't have to be here was pushed out. Okay, you work from home. We've got communications. Of course, we didn't have Zoom calls yet, but we were figuring that out.
Yeah.
And so we basically then was able to spread everybody else who was absolutely necessary from an operations standpoint here, but then we still didn't have the volunteers. So we brought in the National Guard, and they helped, and then the United Way and Greater Houston Community Foundation, they gave us money to hire temporary workers.
Okay.
And so we had as many as 300 per day of temporary workers to do a lot of the work that normally the volunteers were doing. And then for our distribution, at first it was tough because most of our partners shut down because they were saying, well, it's not safe for us. And then we're saying, well, yeah, but we've got, there's all these people who are now unemployed. What are they supposed to do? And so we started doing what we called super site works, which that had never been done before. I think we got the idea from the San Antonio Food Bank to just take a giant parking lot, like we were using NRG Stadium mainly.
Okay.
And we basically just set up these tents, covered areas where we'd lay the product out, and then people would drive through, and then we get a collection of volunteers who are willing to work.
Kind of scenario.
Yeah. Drive-through distributions, serving thousands of families at a time. And that once we got that technique down, we were just doing it in lots of different sites, around the community. And then so many of our partners, as they were opening up, they would do smaller versions of that. And so then that's how we managed to get the product going throughout the disaster.
Wow, that's amazing. But you got the job done.
Yeah, and it's gratifying, to be able to help people when it's most needed. But what really matters is having a team that can adjust. We have a philosophy here we call a culture of yes.
Okay.
And the idea is we want to be oriented towards say yes first, then figure out how you're going to do it.
Exactly.
Not the answer is no unless we can figure out a way, because you're going to horribly underserve if that's what you do. Just the nature of this work here, it's heavily opportunistic. We don't know what the donation opportunities are going to be. We get surplus food. That's what our biggest engine is the waste of the food industry. It's product that's perfectly good, but for some reason they couldn't sell it, where it's a bent carrot or too much cereal produced, whatever it is. How do we position ourselves to be able to handle it, set up a set of partnerships so that we can distribute it out? How can we get enough volunteers in order to do whatever repackaging or reboxing that we have to do?
Wow.
And then how do we then fund it? And it's all about, you go ahead and make the commitment you're going to do it, and then you hope to be able to put everything together in place to make it happen.
Got it. So under your leadership, the Houston Food Bank has seen increased distribution. What strategies and innovations have been key to this growth?
Yeah, so it's important to recognize a lot of times when people say, the food bank's doing more, demand is up. It doesn't really work like that. We don't meet need. I mean, the reality is the households that we serve, they're mostly working households. 2/3 of the food insecure households are working households.
Okay.
But they're not making enough money to be consistently stable.
Right.
And so they're struggling to pay their rent, struggling to pay the utility bills, struggling to pay medical costs, transportation, et cetera. Food tends to be the most flexible expense, right?
Sure.
You can't pay 90% of your rent, but you can pay 90% of your food costs. You may go hungry. More likely what you'll do is you'll make nutritional compromises. So that's the world that we then are trying to assist, where their needs are so much bigger than just, that next meal.
Right.
It's the rent, et cetera. So we're just trying to do as much as we can, at any given time. So how can we do more? Well, we have to be able to say yes to as much of these surplus as possible. The first thing that's going to require is labor. And so we built this facility to be able to handle up to 1,000 volunteers working at a time.
Wow.
And we put systems in place so that we can say yes to almost any level of volunteer group who wants to come. You want to have a big corporate event and 700 people work? Great, we'll make it work.
Go for it.
We'll be ready for you, and we'll have the product for you to work. And then that gives us the ability to say yes to that product on the front end. Then you ask the question, how am I going to pay for all this? Because even when companies, they give us the food, they don't even pay to ship it to us. They say, I've got this product for you. It's in Columbus, Ohio. Come get it.
You figure it out.
So we got to pay, trucking to go get it. And we have a very large fleet out there. We run 60 to 70 trucks just in this area per day, doing routes, doing pickups and deliveries.
Wow.
How do you pay for all that? Well, what we did, we designed this facility also to try and create this really good volunteer experience that not only would encourage people to come here to volunteer, but then they'd see what the value is so that we could then build a relationship and then get donations and then get the cash to fund it. And that model has worked really well for us. And that's why this is the largest food bank in the United States, is we've managed to capture the imagination of Houston. So we get huge numbers of volunteers, 94,000 unduplicated volunteers last year. And then the volunteers themselves, also the companies, the churches, the organizations they work for, then say, let's support this with money so that they can go get more food to help more people.
The largest food bank in the United States.
Yes.
That's big.
Well, Houston's big. I mean, realistically, there's not many cities
that are bigger. It's big. So let's talk a little bit about the Houston Restaurant Week. I think it's started already, or it's about to start.
No, August the 1st it starts, and it runs through September the 1st.
How did the Houston Food Bank get involved, and how has it grown over the past years?
Well, from our standpoint, I mean, just pure luck. So this really nice woman, Cleverly Stone, she was kind of a restaurant writer, not a restaurant critique. She was always clear on that. She celebrated the work of great chefs and great restaurants in the community. And she had the idea that if they did a promotion during the month of August, to give a discount for a price fixed menu, and then a portion of that revenue then went to the food bank. It would encourage people to go to the restaurants at the slowest time of the year. Because normally August, like summer is horrible for restaurants.
That's true.
Lots of restaurants, if you're going to go out of business, that's when it's going to happen. So the idea of this was it would be a money raiser for the food bank, and it would help keep the waiters and the kitchen workers, et cetera, employed at the restaurants and the restaurants going. Okay. Well, it was a brilliant concept, and and so it's just grown tremendously. Her daughter has taken it over, Katie Stone, and this year is frankly bigger than ever, where there's over 400 restaurants participating this month.
Wow!
And it's just HoustonRestaurantWeeks.org.
It's grown tremendously, because I remember I went like 6 years ago, and I didn't have many options at that time. So how many restaurants again already?
It's over 400. It's huge. I mean, because we really like it for two reasons. First off, we're in the anti-poverty business.
Yes.
The best outcome is somebody not needing us, right? And Houston Restaurant Weeks is pretty darn good at changing the math for restaurants in the summer. So it's like, wow, more people don't need us. That's great. And then, the restaurants anywhere like $3 for a lunch to $7, for a dinner. Every one of those times someone eats, multiple other people are going to get to eat as well. So it's a real win.
That's amazing, brilliant. Currently, the Houston Food Bank has any programs for the community? Anything going on at the moment?
Well, this time of year, of course, it's back to school time. So there's a number of things that we do, particularly with the schools and kids. So one of my favorite things that we do is we work with after-school programs like the Boys and Girls Lab, YMCA. And the idea is we provide a hot meal, a unitized hot meal over 100 sites a day. And the purpose of that really, it's not just a meal for the kids, but to keep the kids involved in the after-school program, because both like the YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs, they can document that the kids participating in their programs are more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to have positive outcomes.
Right.
So we're like supporting that.
Okay.
Then we work directly with the schools in a couple of ways. The one that is the most famous is, of course, the backpack program.
Okay.
The backpack program is a weekend supply for children that a teacher or counselor has identified as they do not think that child is consistently eating outside of the school.
Okay.
So it's kind of the worst of the worst cases. Now, the reality is child hunger in the United States is not a large number of people. It's a tragic number of people, but overwhelmingly, if somebody's going hungry in the household, it's the parent. What parent would not suffer before their child suffer, right?
For sure.
But there are some families that they're so poor that no matter how much the parent sacrifices, they're not able to consistently keep food on the plate on the dinner table.
Correct.
So the backpack program targets those kids. So we work with over 700, or right about 700 schools for that. Okay. And then we also do what we call school markets, where we provide food assistance to schools. And then we partner with an organization called Brighter Bites, which does this nutrition ed, kind of a produce consumption program where we supply the produce. Brighter Bites provides the demos and the training and the activities, and the schools agree to do a curriculum. And the whole idea is to increase produce consumption by those families. And it's very successful. Yes. So there's a lot of initiatives that we do with the schools.
So kids, a lot of programs going on. Until when is the backpack one?
Well, the backpack program will start when the school starts.
Oh, it starts when the school starts.
Yeah, it starts when the school. Yeah, it starts there. During the summer months, we flip into a different mode. It's called the summer feeding program that we do.
Okay.
So summer is actually the worst season for hunger for children. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? I mean,
Right,
the kid's
right.
not in school. That's 2 extra meals a day. If it is a family that is struggling financially, they may not be able to make up that difference. So we kind of go into an overdrive mode for our kitchen here. So we flip from just doing these after school programs to doing any one of the sites. It could be an apartment complex, could be just a camp. Anybody who will do these meals, we'll make them, we'll deliver them to you
Oh,
if you'll get them to
wow.
those kids.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay, so how can businesses or anyone who would like to get involved with the Houston Food Bank, how can that happen?
Oh, with Monica, now you're asking a question I love to answer. Yeah, it's very easy to do. You just go to the website, houstonfoodbank.org, and there's like, oh, you want to help? We've got the little tab there.
Okay.
Our favorite way is come volunteer. It is actually, for most people, if you were to ask the question, hey, would it be better if I worked for 3 hours and gave you the money, all my wages for 3 hours, or came and volunteer for 3 hours? For most people, the net gain to the community is actually higher for your volunteer time. I know it sounds crazy,
Yes.
but like one of the types of donations we get, for example, is the grocery stores that will give us their dented cans and stuff, right?
Okay.
Boxes that are torn or whatever. So we get it, but we can't just pass that out. Some of those dents are not safe. Some of them are safe.
Right.
Some of the tears are safe. Some are not safe. So we go by Food and Drug Administration standards, and we got to inspect everything, sanitize, categorize, box, make ready for distribution. It's a lot of work. But the average output per person per hour is like, I think it's $75 to $80. So unless you're making more than $75 or $80 an hour,
Right.
an hour of your time will help the community more than if you gave us all of the money you made in that hour. So anyway, so our favorite thing is come register. We'll put you to work. Hopefully you'll have a good time and you'll tell your friends.
Exactly.
And then of course, cash. The one thing we don't encourage that much anymore is food drives. I mean, it's fine if people want to do it, but the reality is we can get food cheaper than you can. We don't buy it. But like for instance, one of the best ways that we get food these days is we go to the farms and we say, hey, will you give us your ugly produce? Okay. Your onion that's too small, your apple's got the branch abrasion, whatever.
The ones that nobody will buy at the store.
At the supermarket, right. The ones that are like, they don't really want them there. So the answer is generally, sure, we'll give it to you, but we're not going to lose money to pick and box it for you or pick and bag it for you. So we say, fine, we'll pay your cost to pick and bag it. You donate it. So we're getting it for pennies on the dollar, but we still got to come up with those pennies on the dollar. So that's why I say, look, I can get a tractor trailer load of produce, like 40,000 pounds of produce, and our landed cost for that entire 40,000 pounds might be in the neighborhood of $7,000 or so. Transportation in and everything, in some cases higher. That's incredible. You never buy food that cheap. So rather than you buy food to give us in a food drive, just give us the cash and we'll get way more in this fresh produce, which quite frankly is likely to be more healthy anyway.
Definitely. So how do you see the Houston Food Bank within the next 5 years? Is there more growth?
So the food bank, has grown a lot. I mean, when I got here 30 years ago, just put it in pounds, we were distributing about 30 million pounds a year. We just finished distributing 170 million.
Wow.
I think that, probably when you look at just how much surplus is still out there, what's capturable, et cetera, I could see us getting to 300 million.
Okay.
Actually not pound. Yeah. 300 million pounds. Of actual distribution a year.
Okay.
So we're trying to build up the capacity to do that. But the biggest thing that I see as our change over time is how do we maximize the impact of what we distribute? See, a way to think of this is like, think of just the dollar value of the food. It's like $250 million worth of food this year. That's a lot. I mean, if you were a foundation and you were giving away $250 million, you wouldn't just say, oh, so long as I'm giving away the money, that's good. You want to say, how do I maximize the impact?
Yes.
How do I not just give some money that's good for today? And so we're really changing the way we look at our distribution to focus on initiatives that partner with other organizations that will get more value, more help for people per dollar. So we do things like with the community colleges and universities, we do what we call food scholarships.
Okay.
And the food scholarship isn't meant to just be, here's some emergency food so you don't go hungry. It's meant to be like a cash value to you, like a scholarship would be, to financially stabilize you so you're more likely to graduate, just like a scholarship would do. We're doing with or health clinics and hospital systems, we're doing what we call produce prescriptions, where, as I mentioned, the produce part, we're doing like 7+ tractor trailer loads of produce a day now, 6 days a week. And that food can, if you prescribe that to somebody who's food insecure and not having positive health outcomes, you can help change those health outcomes.
Definitely.
Most of our health outcomes have nothing to do with medical care. They're like, what are what's called social determinants of health, right? In our own environment. So our diet, our exercise, where we live, etc.
Yes.
We can help a lot with that. If you identify the people that should be that need to eat more healthy food, we have healthy food. So we're now working with the healthcare providers to try and change the outcomes of their patients in a way that is much more impactful than any level of medical care could do.
That's amazing.
So it's like that's how I see us
amazing.
evolving. It's not just providing people with food to get by, but looking at just how much of an abundance of this resource there is, how much more impact can we do beyond that?
Because I don't know why usually when people think about food bank, they think about not healthy food for some reason. And
well, it's our history for a couple of reasons.
But that's changing. It's been changing.
Oh, significantly. So when I started 35 years ago, the reality is, a lot of mostly canned goods, a lot of snacks and stuff like that. What people think of a food box, and that's now not mostly what we do. If you actually, there have been studies done of food bank inventory, and our distribution is on average significantly better than the American diet on average. In part because that's quite frankly how surpluses evolved. I mean, it used to be you go to a supermarket and what you bought mostly was canned processed foods.
Canned processed food. Yeah.
Most people are not buying mostly canned processed foods in the supermarket. They're mostly buying what used to be called the perimeter of the store. The fresh produce, the dairies, meats, et cetera. Well, that's actually now more what's available as surplus.
That's great.
So between what's available as supply, and then just also as we've changed our strategy on what we pursue and how we build our infrastructure, that's what we handle. You look at that fleet outside, every one of those units has a refrigeration unit. And there's a reason for that, because we're not in the business of just picking up dry goods anymore. We want to make sure that we can always say yes to the fresh and frozen items that need to be taken care of.
That's amazing. Love it. So healthy people, you definitely need to target all those people that need to eat better, healthy, that need a healthier diet. So I think it's a great thing that you guys are doing. Do you have any final words for Onda Magazine and the Hispanic community in specific?
Yeah, I'll point out that just related to the healthy part, another aspect to that is that a family that is struggling with food insecurity is far more likely to eat less healthy foods. Unfortunately, the way our food supply has evolved in the United States, unhealthy food is cheaper than healthy food.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately.
So, as a result, you end up with higher rates of obesity, higher rates of diabetes, et cetera. So this is where our own push towards how do we do more healthy food is only makes sense. But also, how do we just be part of that conversation of changing, the overall American diet?
Until the next one, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and service.
Thank you.
¿Qué Onda Magazine presentó?